Hello, welcome to the channel Why Stories. Enjoy watching.
Need to get the kids ready for school? Borrow from the neighbors. My husband smirked when I looked at my bank statement. 350,000 pesos spent on his mother's vacation in Miami. The next day, though, when he came home, he was in for a shock. The sky was heavy with gray clouds as Patricia approached the house. The shopping bags dug into her fingers, leaving purplish marks. She could have taken a taxi, but there was no extra money. Every penny counted. Her twins, Carlos and Amelia, were starting first grade this year, and the thought made her smile and shiver with fear at the same time. School uniforms, backpacks, supplies, fees, an endless list of expenses that Ignacio treated with irritating carelessness. "We can always borrow," he would usually say when Patricia started calculating the upcoming costs. "Mom will help." The mere mention of her mother-in-law made her stomach twist. Dolores's help always came at a triple price: money, humiliation, and endless gratitude. Every time they owed that woman, Patricia felt her stealing another piece of their family's independence. In the elevator, Patricia leaned against the cool wall and closed her eyes. 6th floor. Enough time to recall yesterday's conversation with Dolores, who had shown up uninvited with gifts, a bag of apples that had been sitting too long in her fridge and a box of expired chocolates. "Ignacio works so hard," Dolores sighed, settling into an armchair like a queen visiting her vassals. "And you, Patricia, should manage the budget better. In my time, women knew how to save." Save? Patricia barely held back a laugh. Last winter, Dolores had bought herself a third mink coat, twirling in front of her daughter-in-law to show it off. "The doctor said I have to protect my joints," she had explained. "And the money for those joints?" Ignacio's, of course, extracted after 2 weeks of terror, incessant phone calls, and tearful messages about unbearable pain. The elevator doors slid open. Patricia closed her eyes for a moment, gathering her strength before facing her husband and kids, and reached for her keys. The apartment greeted her with unusual silence. At this hour, the twins were usually watching cartoons or roughhousing in their room. But today, they were gone. She remembered she'd dropped them off at her mother's place for the evening. "Pick them up around 6, she reminded herself. Patricia unpacked the groceries and went to the bedroom to change. Out of habit, she pulled her wallet from her bag and froze. Something was wrong. She went through the compartments, discount cards, a bit of cash, her transit pass, but the most important thing was missing: the blue Banco Nacional card she had been secretly using for 2 years to save for the children's school expenses. Her heart pounded, and nausea rose in her throat. She turned her bag inside out, emptied it onto the bed, searched every pocket, no card. Her legs shaking, Patricia staggered to the desk, grabbed her phone, and opened the banking app. The last transaction glowed on the screen with merciless clarity: withdrawal, 350,000 pesos. Time, 11:43 a.m. Today. "No, it can't be," she whispered, collapsing onto the edge of the bed. It was the whole sum, every penny she had painstakingly saved from 2 years of secret freelancing, money Ignacio never knew about. She had set up a separate account for this purpose, funneling payments from urgent translations and editing gigs she did at night while the family slept. Small sums, 10 to 15,000 a month, but over 2 years, it had added up. Ignacio had been listed as an authorized user on the account back when they first got married, and she opened her first bank cards, with his help on the paperwork. Back then, it had seemed natural. After all, they were family. She had even forgotten about it, until she started secretly saving money. Patricia frantically dialed her husband's number. "The subscriber is temporarily unavailable," the mechanical voice replied. She dialed again and again, with the same result. "Bastard," she whispered, feeling a lump rising in her throat. She walked over to the window, clutching her phone so tightly her knuckles turned white. Down below, people hurried about their lives. Cars passed by, ordinary life that, for her, had collapsed in an instant. It wasn't just money that had been stolen, it was the children's future, their smooth start to school life, her own peace of mind and confidence that she could provide the twins with what they needed. The clock on the wall showed 4. Patricia mechanically busied herself with household chores, trying to distract herself from the gnawing thoughts. Maybe it was a mistake? Maybe the card just fell out somewhere? And the withdrawal? A glitch in the system? But she knew she was lying to herself. The card had been in her wallet just last night. She remembered it clearly. Ignacio had shown up around 8, when Patricia had already returned from her mother's with the kids and put them to bed. He stumbled into the apartment with a carefree smile, reeking of alcohol and cheap cologne, a wilted bouquet of roses wrapped in cellophane in his hands. "For my beautiful lady," he said, holding out the flowers with a grin as if he were offering her the greatest gift. Patricia stood there silently, unmoving, staring at her husband. Only one question pounded in her mind. "Where's the money, Ignacio?" His smile faltered but didn't disappear completely. "What money, darling?" He tried to hug her, but she stepped back. 350,000 pesos. From my card. The one that's missing from my wallet. Ignacio walked to the kitchen, poured himself a glass of water, and drank it in one gulp. His face began to change, the carefree mask gave way to irritation. "Oh, that," he said, slamming the glass down on the table so hard it almost cracked. "Maybe you'd like to explain why you were hiding that much money from me? Stashing it away like I'm some kind of thief?" Patricia couldn't believe what she was hearing. "You stole my card, emptied the account, and now you're blaming me?" "I didn't steal it. I used my legal rights," Ignacio snapped. "Did you forget that I'm an authorized user on that account? I needed the card to approve the transaction. And that money isn't yours, it's ours. I'm the head of the family. I have the right to know about all the finances and manage them. What did you spend it on?" Patricia's voice became quiet and dangerous. Ignacio hesitated, as if weighing whether he should tell the truth, then straightened up, bracing himself. "Mom has always dreamed of visiting Miami. She never had the chance to travel, and now, while she's still healthy, she deserves it. I bought her a 2-week all-inclusive tour. A good hotel right on the ocean." A picture flashed before Patricia's eyes, Dolores lounging on a beach chair, draped in her mink coat. Of course she'd bring it, just in case it got chilly, sipping cocktails and telling everyone around how wonderful her son was and how he did everything for her. "And what about the kids?" Patricia asked quietly. "Do you remember they're starting first grade in a month? How are we supposed to buy them everything they need?" Ignacio waved her off like she was an annoying fly. "You'll borrow from the neighbors if you have to. How much could it cost anyway?" "A couple of notebooks and pens." "Hardly 350,000 pesos. A couple of notebooks?" Patricia felt a wave of rage rising inside her. Uniforms, backpacks, shoes, gym clothes, stationery, fees for classroom repairs, textbooks, workbooks. "Do you have any idea how much is needed?" "You'll manage somehow," Ignacio said sharply. "Mom is more important. She's done so much for me, and you only ever think about yourself. You've always been selfish." "I'm selfish?" Patricia gasped in outrage. "For the last 5 years, your mother has been squeezing money out of us for imaginary illnesses, and then buying furs and gold. You don't even see how she manipulates you." "Don't you dare speak that way about my mother," Ignacio slammed his fist on the table. "She's sick. It's hard for her to be alone. She feels just fine when it comes to shopping or going to her friends' country houses." Patricia screamed. It's only when she needs money that she suddenly becomes deathly ill. Their argument grew louder. Patricia recalled all the times her mother-in-law had interfered in their lives, how she criticized her cooking, how she advised Ignacio to keep his wife on a tight leash, how she hinted that any other woman would be grateful for such a husband, but Patricia only wanted money. "We have a mortgage, Ignacio," Patricia was trembling. "We've been paying for this apartment for 7 years, cutting back on everything, and you just threw away all our savings on your mother's whim." "It's not a whim," Ignacio barked. "And enough with the hysteria. The money is spent. Period. Don't even think about getting it back. The trip is non-refundable. Patricia covered her face with her hands. All her plans, all her hopes to give her children a proper start at school, gone in an instant. And instead of admitting he was wrong, her husband blamed her. "You don't even understand what you've done, do you?" she asked quietly, lowering her hands. "You stole your children's future." Something changed in Ignacio's face. His eyes narrowed, his features sharpened. In the next moment, Patricia saw his hand swing up. The blow was sharp and unexpected. She flew backward, hitting her back against the corner of the table. Pain shot through her spine, and dark spots danced before her eyes. Stunned, she slid to the floor, unable to believe what had just happened. In 10 years of marriage, Ignacio had never laid a hand on her. "That's what you get for hiding money and insulting my mother," he hissed, looming over her. A soft, stifled sob came from the kitchen doorway. They both turned their heads and saw Carlos, pale, his eyes wide with horror. Beside him stood Amelia, tear-streaked, clutching a stuffed rabbit tightly to her chest. "Daddy hit Mommy," the boy whispered, and it sounded like a sentence. Ignacio jerked toward the children as if he wanted to explain something, but they recoiled. And in Carlos's eyes, Patricia saw something new, not childish fear, but cold contempt. She struggled to her feet, leaning against the wall, feeling pain throb in her back and head. "Kids, go to your room," she said quietly. "Everything's fine. We're just talking to Daddy." The twins didn't move. Carlos stepped forward, shielding his sister. "Don't touch Mommy," he said to his father, his voice unexpectedly firm. Ignacio laughed, drunkenly, viciously. "Look at the little protector. Get to your room before I give you something to cry about." He staggered toward his son. Patricia darted forward, putting herself between him and the children. "Touch them and see what happens," she hissed. Ignacio shoved her so hard she fell again, this time striking her head against the refrigerator. A loud ringing filled her ears. Through the haze, she saw her husband lift his leg, about to kick, but something happened. He suddenly staggered and collapsed heavily to the floor. A crystal vase, a wedding gift from Dolores that Patricia had always hated for its gaudiness and uselessness, shattered beside his head. Carlos stood in the doorway, his face pale, his fists clenched. His gaze was oddly adult, steady, and determined. "Carlos," Patricia whispered, trying to get up. "What did you?" "He wanted to hit you," the boy said simply. "I threw the vase at him." Ignacio groaned, propping himself up on his elbows. A bloody scrape was spreading across his forehead. He swept the room with a dazed look, as if he couldn't understand where he was. "You! What have you done, you little brat?" he rasped when he saw his son. "You're gonna regret this." Patricia was next to the children in one leap. "Go to your room, now," she commanded. "Pack only what you need. We're leaving." "Where are we going?" Amelia asked fearfully. "To Grandma's," Patricia answered without looking at her husband, who was struggling to stand. "Hurry." The children darted to their room. Patricia rushed to the bedroom, grabbed a suitcase, and began tossing in underwear, a few t-shirts, jeans, and important documents from the desk drawer. She moved mechanically, as if in a dream. Through the hallway, she could hear Ignacio cursing as he got up and stumbled to the bathroom, probably to clean himself up. She knew she had no more than 5 minutes. The children were quicker than her. Carlos stood in the doorway with a backpack and a shopping bag, holding his sister's hand. His eyes were filled with worry but also determination. "We're ready, Mom," he said. Patricia cast one last glance at the bedroom she had shared with Ignacio for 10 years, the photo on the dresser, smiling, happy, holding their newborn twins. It felt like a memory from another life. They left the apartment while Ignacio was still in the bathroom. Patricia carefully closed the door, trying not to make a sound. In the elevator, Amelia clung to her, silently crying. Carlos stood straight, like a little soldier. "Everything will be okay," Patricia said, not recognizing her own voice. From now on, everything will be okay. But she wasn't sure. Ahead lay uncertainty, a divorce, a battle for the apartment and for survival, and a confrontation with her mother-in-law, who would return from Miami to find out her precious son had been abandoned. Patricia called a taxi to her mother's house. While they waited, she looked at her children and felt a strange mix of despair and resolve growing inside her. One thing she knew for sure, she would never forgive the woman who had stolen her money and happiness. Her mother's apartment greeted them with the smell of fresh baking and silence. Anna, seeing her daughter's swollen face and frightened grandchildren, didn't ask any questions. She quietly helped unpack, settled the children on the pull-out couch in the living room, and brewed strong tea. "Now tell me everything," she said softly when they were alone in the kitchen. Patricia stared into her cup where thyme petals floated, unable to find the words. Where to begin? The stolen money? The blow? The betrayal that had been building for years? "He hit me," she finally said. "He took the money I had been saving for the twins' school and hit me when I tried to ask why." Anna sighed and placed her wrinkled hand over Patricia's. It was his mother again, wasn't it? Patricia nodded, feeling tears rising to her throat. 350,000 pesos, Mom. I had been saving for 2 years, little by little, so we'd have everything for school. And he sent her to Miami. Miami? Anna shook her head. My God, that woman has no shame. She never did, Patricia said bitterly. I just don't understand how he could do this. The kids are starting first grade this year, every penny counts, and he just... Her voice broke. Patricia covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. The fear, pain, humiliation, all the tension from the past hours poured out of her. Anna pulled her into a hug, letting her cry it out. Then she said quietly, "You need to go to the clinic and have the injuries documented. It's important if you decide to file for divorce." Divorce? Patricia echoed, wiping her tears. I don't even know how to think about it. 10 years of marriage, the mortgage, the kids. The kids have already understood everything, her mother said gently. They don't deserve to grow up with a father who hits their mother. Patricia remembered Carlos's face, his determined look when he had thrown the vase. A 7-year-old boy had been braver and more decisive than she was. You're right, she nodded. Tomorrow I'll go to the clinic and then to a lawyer. Her phone vibrated. Ignacio. A string of messages followed, ranging from pleas to talk like adults to threats to find her and drag her home by her hair. Patricia turned off the phone and, for the first time in a long while, felt relief. The next morning, she woke to a quiet whispering. The twins were sitting on the floor by her bed, discussing something. Good morning. Patricia smiled, reaching out to them. The children flinched and lifted their heads. Amelia immediately threw herself into her mother's arms. Carlos stayed seated, watching his mother tensely. We're not going back to Daddy, are we? He asked directly. Patricia forced herself to meet his eyes. No, Carlos. We're not going back to Daddy. Good, the boy said, nodding. He's bad. He's not bad, Patricia replied automatically, repeating the line adults often say to children during a divorce. We just can't live together anymore. He hit you, Carlos said stubbornly. He tried to hit you again. That means he's bad. Amelia snuggled closer to her mother. And Grandma Dolores, is she bad too? She asked quietly. She always says Carlos and I are noisy and rude. Patricia sighed. She wanted to say yes, she's very bad, but something stopped her. Grandma Dolores loves your daddy very much, she said carefully. Sometimes she loves him so much she forgets about everyone else. That's not right, but it happens. Carlos looked at her skeptically but said nothing. After breakfast, Patricia dropped the kids off at daycare and went first to the clinic, where her bruised back and mild concussion were documented, and then to a lawyer specializing in family law. Diego, a stocky middle-aged man with a shrewd look, listened carefully, reviewed the medical report, and nodded. Divorce through court, he said, with evidence of domestic violence and a petition for sole custody. What about the property? The apartment is mortgaged, Patricia sighed. 3 more years to pay. We're co-borrowers. Does he work? Yes, as a manager at a construction company. About 80,000 pesos salary. And you? Freelance translator. Between 40 and 60, depending on orders. The lawyer made notes in his notebook. We'll demand a division of the apartment and child support. Based on his salary, it should be about 25,000 pesos. But I have to warn you, the process can be long and unpleasant, especially if the other side resists. Patricia remembered Ignacio's rage, his obsession with his mother, and nodded. It will. Oh, it definitely will. When she left the lawyer's office, Patricia received a message from a colleague, urgent assignment, technical translation, good pay, deadline in 3 days. She accepted without hesitation. Money was needed now more than ever. That evening, when the children were asleep and her mother was watching a series in her room, Patricia sat at her laptop working on the translation. The doorbell rang. She flinched, glancing at the clock, nearly 11. Who could be visiting so late? Peering through the peephole, she saw Ignacio. He was sober, clean-shaven, and holding a bouquet, not the usual wilted roses, but lush white chrysanthemums, the kind she used to love. Her heart started racing, her mouth went dry. Patricia didn't move, hoping he would think no one was home and leave. But Ignacio rang again, then began knocking on the door. Patricia, I know you're in there. His voice was calm but laced with irritation. Open up, we need to talk. She stayed silent. Her mother appeared from her room, giving her a questioning look. Patricia shook her head. Patricia. Ignacio's voice grew louder. Open this damn door. The kids are mine too, not just yours. I have a right to see them. Leave, Ignacio, she finally said. The children are asleep, and I don't want to talk to you. Look, I lost my temper yesterday, he said, adopting a conciliatory tone. Let's talk like adults. I was wrong about the money. I shouldn't have taken it without asking. Patricia gave a bitter smile. Without asking, as if he had borrowed her hairbrush or scarf. I've made my decision, Ignacio. Tomorrow my lawyer is filing for divorce. There was a heavy silence. Patricia could almost feel the rage boiling behind the door. You can't do that, he finally hissed. I should be the one filing for divorce after your brat nearly split my skull open. My brat was defending his mother from a drunk abuser, Patricia replied calmly, though she was shaking inside. Now go, or I'll call the police. Ignacio punched the door with such force that the frame shook. You'll regret this, he spat. I swear, you'll regret it. Without me, you have nothing. No money, no home. Do you really think you can handle the mortgage on your pitiful freelance income? The apartment will have to be sold, and the money split. You and the kids will end up on the street. Patricia said nothing, listening to his heavy breathing through the door. Go cry to your mother, Ignacio, she finally said. She'll comfort you, tell you what a terrible and ungrateful wife I was. Better yet, ask her to refund the money for that Miami trip. Then maybe we'll have something to discuss. Bitch, he hissed. She heard his footsteps retreating. Patricia leaned against the wall, her legs trembling. Anna came over and hugged her. You did good, she said softly. Very brave. But Patricia didn't feel brave. She felt empty and terrified. Ignacio was right about one thing, she couldn't handle the mortgage without his salary. She didn't know what to do next. Morning started with a call from the daycare. The anxious voice of the teacher said that their father had come to pick up the twins, but they refused to go with him and caused such a commotion that the principal had to be called. Patricia got to the daycare in 15 minutes. In the principal's office sat a scowling Ignacio, and in the corner stood the twins, clinging to each other. Carlos's face was closed off, Amelia was quietly crying. What's going on? Patricia asked as she entered. Your husband tried to take the children, explained the principal, a weary-looking older woman. But they refused. They said they were scared of him. Ignacio jumped to his feet. This is all you're doing, he shouted. You're turning them against me. They're my children too. I have every right to see them. Please don't shout, the principal said calmly. There are children present. Patricia knelt down in front of the twins. It's okay, she said quietly. Mom's here now. Amelia immediately threw her arms around Patricia's neck. Carlos grabbed her hand tightly, never taking his wary eyes off his father. Are you divorcing? The principal asked, looking from Patricia to Ignacio. Yes, Patricia said firmly. And I'm asking you not to release the children to their father without my express permission. You have no right. Ignacio exploded. I'm their father. This is kidnapping. Do you have a court order specifying visitation rights? The principal asked, adjusting her glasses. Not yet, but... Then I can't force the children to go with you against their will, the woman said firmly. Especially under these circumstances. Ignacio glared at her, then turned his fury on Patricia. You'll pay for this, he hissed. I'll take the apartment, count on it. And the kids too. He stormed out, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. The principal shook her head. Write an official request stating that the father is not to take the children, she said to Patricia, and try to get a court order on custody as soon as possible. That evening, after putting the children to bed, Patricia sat at her computer to finish her translation. Her head throbbed, her back ached from the tension, but she forced herself to work. She needed the money. Her phone vibrated. Message from an unknown number. She opened it and froze. A picture of their apartment, things scattered, furniture broken, books torn apart. Another message followed, this is just the beginning. Patricia felt a wave of nausea rise in her throat. Ignacio had trashed their home. The very home they had built together over 10 years, carefully saving for repairs and furniture. The phone rang, the same number. With trembling fingers, she answered. Like it? Ignacio's voice was strangely calm. Your half of the apartment looks like this now. Why did you do this? She whispered. So you understand, without me, you have nothing, he said coldly. Either you come back and withdraw that stupid divorce petition, or I'll destroy everything we ever had. Patricia stayed silent, feeling not fear now, but cold rage rising inside her. I'm not coming back, she said at last. Never. And you'll have to answer for wrecking the apartment too. To whom? Ignacio laughed. You left everything behind. I can say you trashed it yourself before leaving. Or your little brat did it. By the way, how is he? Ready to crack someone else's head open with a vase? Don't you dare talk about Carlos like that. How else should I talk about him? He nearly killed me. You know how many stitches I got? 8. A kid should respect his father, not attack him. Patricia bit her lip. Suddenly, she realized that Ignacio could easily twist everything, painting himself as the innocent victim, a model father attacked by an aggressive child. Who would people believe? Tomorrow I'll come to collect the kids' remaining things, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. And don't you dare get in my way. Go ahead. Ignacio scoffed. But the kids' stuff is in the same state as everything else. Oh, and your precious porcelain figurine collection too. Shame, they were really valuable. Patricia closed her eyes. Those figurines, a gift from her late father, who had spent his life collecting them, were the only thing she had left of him. You're a monster, she whispered. No. I'm just showing you what happens when you go against me, Ignacio replied calmly. And this is just the beginning. Think it over, Patricia. You have until tomorrow. Either you withdraw the divorce petition, or you know what comes next. He hung up. Patricia sat there, staring into space. Inside, she felt cold and hollow, as if all emotions had been shut off at once. She didn't cry. There were no tears left. Something had broken inside her, completely and irreversibly. There was a gentle knock at the door. Her mother entered in her housecoat, carrying a cup of herbal tea. "I thought you could use this," she said, placing the cup on the table. Then she caught sight of Patricia's face. What happened? Patricia silently showed her the photo of the wrecked apartment. "My God!" Anna gasped. "He did this?" "Yes," Patricia nodded. "And he's threatening to do worse if I don't withdraw the divorce." Her mother sat down beside her and took her hand. "You're not thinking of giving in, are you?" Patricia shook her head. "No. But I'm scared, Mom. I don't recognize him anymore. It's like a completely different person was living next to me all these years, and now his real face has come out. It happens often," Anna sighed. "People show their true selves only during crises. Your Ignacio was always a mama's boy. It just wasn't so obvious before." Patricia thought back to the beginning. They had met at a friend's birthday party. Ignacio had been cheerful, attentive, caring. He brought her coffee in the mornings, helped her with her studies, supported her when she was starting her career as a translator. His mother, back then, was just a sweet woman who baked pies and gave advice on how to furnish their first rented apartment. Everything changed after the twins were born. It was as if Patricia's motherhood had awakened some dark, possessive side in Dolores. She began to interfere in every aspect of their lives: how to feed the kids, how to dress them, how to raise them. Ignacio, instead of standing by his wife, increasingly sided with his mother. "She's experienced, she only wants to help. Don't be so ungrateful." Then came the illnesses, first real ones like hypertension and arthritis, then more and more imagined ones, costly tests, rare medications from abroad, spa treatments. The money flowed away like water through fingers, and each year it got worse. "What are you thinking about?" her mother asked, seeing Patricia lost in thought. "About how we ended up here," she said bitterly. "You know, there was a moment when I could have changed everything. When the twins were 3, Ignacio and I had our first big fight over money for his mother. I said that if it continued, I would file for divorce. He got scared, apologized, promised it would never happen again. And I believed him. I stayed. Then it was too late. We got stuck, with the mortgage, the routine. It was easier to endure than to start over." Anna hugged her shoulders. "It's never too late to change your life," she said softly. "And you're doing it now. It's painful and scary, but you're on the right path." Patricia nodded, feeling a strange calm settle over her. The point of no return had been crossed the moment Ignacio raised his hand to her. There was no going back, only forward. "Tomorrow, I'm going to the apartment," she said firmly. "See what can be salvaged. And I'm filing a police report about the vandalism." "I'm coming with you," her mother said, squeezing her hand. "You shouldn't face him alone." "Thank you," Patricia smiled for the first time that day. "I don't know what I'd do without you." That night she barely slept. The image of their wrecked home, Ignacio's rage-distorted face, and the terrified eyes of her children haunted her. But deep inside, a new certainty was growing: she had made the right decision. And no threats would make her turn back now. In the morning, for the first time in days, she found the strength to smile at her children over breakfast, tell them a story, even make a joke as she dropped them off at daycare. In Carlos's eyes flashed a look of surprise, as if he hadn't expected his mother to smile again. "Everything will be all right," she whispered as she hugged him goodbye. "I promise." And, at that moment, she truly believed it. The front door of their apartment was ajar. Patricia froze on the threshold, her heart pounding in her throat. Anna squeezed her hand. "Maybe we shouldn't," she whispered. "Let's call the police right now." Patricia shook her head. "I want to see what's left first." She pushed the door open and stepped into the hallway. Dim light from the living room windows fell on scattered belongings, a broken coat rack, shredded children's jackets. The air smelled of alcohol and something sour and unpleasant. Shards crunched underfoot. The living room looked worse than in the photo. The sofa was slashed open, stuffing spilling out. The TV lay smashed on the floor. Books, dozens they had collected over the years, were torn and strewn everywhere. Furniture was overturned, a chair broken in half. "My God," Anna whispered. "What happened here?" Patricia silently moved toward the children's room. The destruction there was less total but still devastating. The twins' toys were scattered, many broken. Their clothes had been dumped from the wardrobe and trampled into the floor. On the wall above Carlos's bed, scrawled in what looked like dark paint, were the words, "Mommy is a whore." Patricia covered her mouth to stifle a gag. It wasn't the sight of the destruction, it was the realization of how sick and vindictive the man she had lived with for 10 years had become. The bedroom was the worst. The bed was stripped and soaked in something dark, probably wine. The wardrobe was toppled, its contents dumped on the floor. The vanity, where her porcelain figurines, her father's legacy, once stood, was now just a heap of shattered shards. Patricia sank to her knees, letting the fragments slip through her fingers. Each figurine, ballerinas, Spanish dancers, Chinese scholars, had a story her father had told her at bedtime. "He did this on purpose," she said quietly, feeling tears sting her eyes. "He knew how much they meant to me." Anna helped her up. "We have to call the police," she said firmly. "This isn't just a family dispute anymore. It's vandalism." Patricia nodded, pulling out her phone, and at that moment, the front door slammed shut with a bang. They both flinched and turned. Ignacio stood in the bedroom doorway. His eyes were bloodshot, as if he hadn't slept for days. Stubble covered his gaunt face. He reeked of stale alcohol. "So you're here," he rasped. "Thought you could sneak in and rob me while I was at work?" Patricia instinctively stepped back, shielding her mother. "We came to collect the children's things," Patricia answered calmly, though she was trembling inside, "the ones you haven't managed to destroy in your madness." Ignacio smirked, and there was something terrifying, inhuman in that smile. "My madness?" He stepped into the room. "You and your little brat are the ones who drove me to this, Patricia. You ran away, humiliated me in front of everyone, and filed for divorce. What, you didn't expect me to react?" "Your reaction suits you," Patricia tried to keep her voice steady. "You attack objects because you can't handle living people. Very brave." Ignacio's face twisted. "Shut up," he bellowed. "Just shut up. You don't understand anything. Do you know what I had to listen to from my mother when she found out you filed for divorce? She called me a loser, said I couldn't even hold on to a worthless wife like you. And so you decided to take it out on our things?" Patricia shook her head. "Pathetic, Ignacio. And you know what? Your mother's right. You really are a loser." She knew she was provoking him, but she couldn't help it. Too many years of humiliation, resentment, and disappointment had piled up. Ignacio lunged toward her, raising his hand to strike. But suddenly Anna stepped between them. Despite her age and fragile frame, she now looked like an enraged lioness protecting her cub. "Just try to touch her," she said quietly, but with such menace that Ignacio involuntarily stepped back. "I've seen my share of bastards in my life, but you're the worst of them. Beating women, destroying their belongings, terrifying children, that's all you're good for. Stay out of this, Anna," Ignacio hissed. "This is between me and your daughter." "Not anymore," Anna said sharply. "The moment you laid a hand on her, it became our business. And believe me, we won't back down." Patricia took out her phone. "I'm calling the police," she said. "Let's have them document what you've done to the apartment." Ignacio paled. "Don't you dare," he hissed. "I'll say you trashed the place to frame me. And who's going to believe you?" Patricia smiled coldly. "The man who sent me pictures of the wreckage and threatened me over the phone? I recorded our conversation, Ignacio, and saved all your messages. It was true. After the first call, she had installed a call recording app. Ignacio looked like he believed her. He started pacing the room like a cornered animal. You won't win, he spat. My mother's back from Miami. She's hired a lawyer, a good one. He'll paint you as an unfit mother who ran away from her family. You'll lose everything, the kids, the apartment. Your mother's back? Patricia felt a chill run down her spine. And how was her trip? Was it worth the money stolen from your children? Ignacio suddenly laughed, loud and bitter. The trip went great, he said with grimness. But now she's really sick. Doctors in Miami found cancer. Stage 4. Turns out she really was sick all these years, and we thought she was faking. Patricia didn't know whether to believe it. It sounded far too convenient, a justification for all the years of manipulation. If your mother is truly sick, I'm sorry, she said cautiously. But it changes nothing. The kids and I are not coming back. You will come back. Ignacio growled. You think you can handle the mortgage on your peanuts? Without me, the apartment will be auctioned off, and you will get nothing. Then so be it, Patricia said calmly. Better to lose the apartment than to live with someone who beats me and teaches the children it's normal. The doorbell rang, sharp and insistent. Ignacio flinched. Who did you call? He hissed. No one, Patricia said, bewildered. I swear, I didn't get a chance. The bell rang again, followed by a familiar voice. Ignacio, open up. It's me, Dolores. Patricia instinctively stepped back toward the window. The last thing they needed was the mother-in-law here. Ignacio rushed to open the door. A moment later, Dolores entered the bedroom, and Patricia barely recognized her. Usually well-groomed, with perfect hair and manicured nails, Dolores now looked gaunt and aged. Dark circles under her eyes, pale skin, trembling hands, she truly looked ill. So, the traitor shows her face, Dolores hissed upon seeing Patricia. Come to see what's left after your betrayal? Hello, Dolores, Patricia said calmly. I see you're back from Miami. How was the trip? Dolores flushed crimson. Trip? Her voice broke into a shriek. I spent half of it in the hospital. Because of you, I found out I'm dying. Because of you, my son is broken and humiliated. Because of me? Patricia raised her eyebrows. I didn't steal 350,000 pesos of family money. And I didn't trash the apartment. You abandoned your family. Dolores stepped closer, pointing a trembling finger. You left a husband who did everything for you and turned your own children against him. Patricia felt a wave of fury rise inside her. For 10 years, she had endured this woman, her hints, her criticisms, her manipulations. For 10 years, she had kept quiet for the sake of family peace. But now, when that peace was already shattered, there was no reason to stay silent. Your son raised his hand against me, she said clearly, as if dictating a report. He hit me in front of the children and was about to hit me again, all because he stole money meant for the twins' schooling to send you to Miami. You begrudge your mother-in-law a little money? Dolores gasped indignantly. After everything I've done for you? And what exactly have you done? Patricia crossed her arms. Showed up uninvited, criticized everything from my cooking to my parenting, badmouthed me to Ignacio, and regularly milked us for money over imaginary illnesses. How dare you? I dare, Patricia raised her voice. For 10 years I kept quiet, afraid of breaking the family. But now that your son has done that himself, I have nothing to lose. You are a terrible mother-in-law, Dolores. You turned your son into a spineless mama's boy who can't tell right from wrong. And it's all your fault. Shut up. Ignacio roared, stepping toward Patricia. But Ana was between them again. Don't you dare touch her, she said quietly, but with such menace that Ignacio stepped back. One more move and I call the police. Son, don't stoop to her level, Dolores said, grabbing Ignacio's arm. Let her go, but we're not giving her the children. What? Patricia felt the ground shift beneath her. You heard me, Dolores smiled, a cold, serpentine smile. My son is filing for sole custody. We have evidence that you're an unfit mother. And your precious boy attacking his father with a vase won't help your case either. You're raising a little psychopath, Dolores hissed. Patricia went cold. She pictured these two trying to take her children away, imagined Carlos and Amelia living in a house with a father who hit and a grandmother who manipulated. It was worse than any nightmare. You will never get my children, she said quietly but firmly. Never. And if you try, I'll do everything in my power to stop you. Everything. Do you understand? She turned to Anna. Mom, we're leaving. There's nothing left here to save. Where do you think you're going? Ignacio blocked their way. Weren't you here for the kids' things? Keep them, Patricia threw over her shoulder. You've destroyed everything anyway. We'll buy new ones. With what? Ignacio laughed. Your pathetic freelance money from translations? Or do you think I'm going to pay child support? Forget it. I'll prove in court you're an unfit mother. You won't get a penny. Patricia silently looked at the man she had once loved. Now standing before her was a stranger, a face twisted by rage, eyes empty. She felt nothing toward him. No hate, no contempt. Only endless exhaustion. I'm not afraid of you, Ignacio, she finally said. And I'm not afraid of your threats either. Do whatever you want. But you will never get the children. She took her mother's hand and headed determinedly for the door. Ignacio stepped aside but spat after them. You'll regret this, Patricia. I swear you will. They walked out of the apartment without a word, took the elevator down, and only once they were outside did Patricia allow herself to breathe deeply, like coming up for air after being underwater. My God, she whispered. What have I done? They'll try to take the kids away from me. Anna squeezed her hand tightly. They won't, she said firmly. You have medical records documenting the abuse. You have the children's testimony. And what does he have? A wrecked apartment and drunken rages. No court will give him the children. Patricia nodded, but anxiety gnawed at her. She knew exactly how far her mother-in-law would go when it came to getting what she wanted. And now that Dolores was determined to take the children, the battle would be brutal. That evening, after the twins had fallen asleep and Patricia sat at the kitchen table working on her translation, her friend Amanda called. Are you okay? Amanda asked without preamble. I heard you and Ignacio are getting divorced. From whom? Patricia asked tiredly. He's telling everyone himself, says you left him, took the kids, and now won't let him see them. Patricia closed her eyes. Of course Ignacio would present himself as the victim, she was the wicked, ungrateful wife, and he the martyr. That's not exactly true, she began cautiously. We are divorcing, but because he hit you? Amanda interrupted. I know. My neighbor's sister works at the ER, she told me. Listen, if you need any help, anything at all, just say so. Patricia felt tears rising in her throat. She was so used to handling everything alone that she had forgotten there were people willing to support her. Thank you, she said quietly. Right now, what I really need is work. Any side job, even small. I need to support the kids, and I doubt I'll see any child support. I can help with that, Amanda brightened. At my publishing house, we're looking for a part-time translator. The pay isn't great, but it's steady. And you can work remotely. That would be amazing, Patricia felt a warmth spread inside her. Really, thank you. No problem, Amanda said with a smile on her voice. Hang in there, and remember you're doing the right thing. After the call, Patricia felt a surge of strength. Maybe it wasn't so hopeless after all. She had people who believed in her and were willing to help. She had work that could support her and the children. And she had the determination to fight to the end. 2 weeks later, the divorce proceedings began. Ignacio, just as he had promised, filed a counterclaim for sole custody. As evidence, he presented a psychological assessment, obviously prepared by one of Dolores's connections, stating that after one interview, Carlos exhibited signs of unmotivated aggression and needed a firm father figure. Dolores showed up in court in a black dress with a cane, leaning against the wall and coughing periodically. During the hearing, she dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief, telling tales about how the wicked daughter-in-law turned the children against their father, how she forbade them from seeing their loving grandmother, how she squandered family money for her own selfish needs. Patricia sat there, fists clenched under the table. Every word out of Dolores's mouth was a lie, but it was delivered so convincingly that even the judge cast her occasional suspicious glances. When it was Patricia's turn, she presented medical reports of her injuries, the audio recording of Ignacio's threats made during their last meeting at the apartment, and photos of the vandalized home. She also submitted testimony from a child psychologist who had been working with the twins after they left home, a report stating that the children feared their father and reacted negatively at any mention of him. The judge, an older woman with a tired face, listened to both sides and then called for a 2-week recess to gather additional evidence. "What do you think? Will she rule in our favor?" Patricia asked her lawyer as they exited the courtroom. "Hard to say," he answered cautiously. "You have medical documentation confirming the violence. But his mother plays the role of the caring grandmother very convincingly, and while their psychological report is questionable, it still carries some weight. What can I do?" "Keep fighting," he shrugged. "Gather more evidence. Maybe there's someone who can testify about your husband's or his mother's behavior, neighbors, friends." Patricia thought for a moment. Over the years, they had lost most of their mutual friends. Ignacio had slowly distanced himself from anyone Dolores didn't approve of. Neighbors? They barely interacted, just polite greetings, although. "There's one neighbor," she said slowly. "Elena, from the 5th floor. She once saw Dolores yelling at Amelia for getting her new coat dirty. Amelia was crying, and Dolores called her spoiled and badly brought up. Elena came to me afterward and said it was outrageous to speak to a child like that." "That could help," the lawyer nodded. "Talk to her, maybe she'll agree to testify." Patricia nodded, but inside, doubt gnawed at her. Would a stranger really be willing to testify in such a sensitive case? To her surprise, Elena not only agreed to testify but also shared more. She had often heard Ignacio shouting at Patricia and the children. "My windows are right below yours," Elena explained, inviting Patricia in for tea. "In the summer, when the windows are open, you can hear everything." I wasn't eavesdropping, but sometimes he was yelling so loudly, it was impossible not to hear. "And what exactly did you hear?" Patricia asked carefully. "Calling you stupid, a spendthrift," Elena shrugged. "Yelling that you didn't know how to raise kids. And once, it was last summer, I heard him threaten you. He said that if you ever dared to go against his mother again, he'd show you who's the real boss in the house." Patricia froze. She couldn't believe how clearly their fights had been heard. How many people knew what was really happening in their family? "Are you really willing to testify to this in court?" she asked. "Of course," Elena nodded. "I divorced an abusive husband 20 years ago. I know how hard it is, especially with kids involved. So yes, I'll testify for you." They talked for another hour. It turned out Elena had noticed far more than Patricia had ever imagined, how Dolores came over almost daily when Patricia was at work and picked fights over unwashed dishes or scattered toys. How Ignacio had been coming home drunk more and more often lately, slamming doors and yelling. How once Carlos had run out into the stairwell in tears and sat there for an hour, afraid to go back inside after accidentally breaking a cup. All these little details painted a terrifying picture of a family where there had been no love or respect for a long time, only fear, manipulation, and control. "Thank you," Patricia said sincerely as they said goodbye. "You have no idea how much this means to me." "It's nothing," Elena smiled. I just want justice to be served. The second court session ended with an unexpected result. The judge ruled to leave the children temporarily with their mother until a final decision on the divorce and property division could be made. Elena's testimony, the additional statements from the child psychologist, and the children's clear reluctance to see their father played a decisive role. Ignacio left the courtroom pale with rage, and Dolores cast such venomous looks at Patricia that a chill ran down her spine. "This isn't over," Dolores hissed as she passed by. "We'll destroy you." Patricia said nothing. She needed to conserve her strength. There were many battles still ahead. Back home, she felt something like hope for the first time in a long while. The children would stay with her, and that meant the worst was behind them. Now she needed to resolve the apartment and child support issues. That night she couldn't sleep, turning over the events of the past weeks in her mind. How quickly her family life had collapsed, how the man she once loved had changed, how now she would have to rebuild her life from scratch, brick by brick. It was terrifying, but strangely exhilarating. For the first time in many years, she was making her own decisions, not living according to someone else's desires and whims. Ignacio started drinking heavily almost immediately after the second hearing. Neighbors reported constant noise, yelling, and loud music from the apartment. The police had been called several times for disturbances. Dolores had moved in with her son, supposedly to take care of him, but from what the neighbors said, she only made things worse with her constant nagging about the betrayal by the ungrateful daughter-in-law. Ignacio was fired from the construction company a month and a half after the court proceedings started. He had been coming to work drunk, missing deadlines, and being rude to clients. The final straw was a scene he made by yelling at his boss, accusing him of conspiring with those damned women who only wanted to take everything away from men. Patricia heard about Ignacio's firing from a mutual acquaintance. The news didn't worry her out of sympathy for her ex-husband, but from a practical standpoint, without a job, he wouldn't be able to pay child support or the mortgage, which meant more trouble ahead. The day after he lost his job, Ignacio called her, for the first time in a long while. Happy now, his voice was dull, as if speaking from underwater. "You ruined my life. Now I'm jobless." "You ruined your own life, Ignacio," Patricia said calmly. "I had nothing to do with it." "Of course, you're never to blame," he sneered bitterly. "Saint Patricia, flawless and perfect. And my mother and I the demons from hell, right?" Patricia sighed. Talking to him in this state was pointless. "What do you want, Ignacio? Why are you calling?" "Money," he said after a pause. "I need money for the mortgage, or the bank will start foreclosure proceedings." Patricia closed her eyes. There it was. Now that he had no income, he wanted her help. The irony was painful. "I don't have that kind of money," she said honestly. "I'm barely scraping by to provide for the kids." "What about your mother?" Ignacio suddenly asked. "Didn't she brag about having savings for a rainy day?" Patricia felt her blood boil. "Leave my mother out of this," she snapped. "You stole the money meant for our kids to send your mother to Miami. Let her pay the mortgage now." "She can't," he said after a pause, and for the first time, his voice held something new, despair. "She really is sick. All the money's going for medications. Chemotherapy costs a fortune. And you believe her?" Patricia couldn't help a bitter laugh. "After all these years of fake illnesses?" "This time it's real," Ignacio said wearily. "I've seen the tests, the scans. The doctors say she has, at most, 6 months. Patricia fell silent, trying to process what she had heard. If it was true, the situation was even more complicated. "I'm sorry if that's true," she said cautiously. "But I can't help with the mortgage. I just don't have the money." "Then the apartment will be sold for debts," Ignacio said after a pause. "And we'll get a pittance after all deductions." "And where are the kids and I supposed to live?" Patricia asked. "Rent a place on my translator's salary?" "Not my problem," Ignacio snapped. "You chose this, now deal with it." I need money for my mother's treatment and for myself. Patricia stayed silent, feeling despair swell inside her. The situation was becoming hopeless. If the apartment was sold, she would only get half of the proceeds. After paying off the mortgage, there wouldn't be much left. With that money, she could maybe buy a small studio apartment on the outskirts of the city. How could she live there with 2 children? I'll think about what I can do, she finally said, but I'm not promising anything. Think faster, Ignacio snapped. I've got 2 weeks before the payment's overdue. After the call, Patricia sat for a long time staring into space. The situation felt like a dead end. Every option was bad. And worst of all, she didn't trust Ignacio about his mother's illness. Dolores had used that trick too many times before. 3 days later, Patricia made a desperate decision. She went to see her mother-in-law herself. She needed to see with her own eyes if Dolores was really sick. And if she was, maybe they could find a solution that worked for everyone. Ignacio opened the door, unshaven, bloodshot eyes, smelling strongly of alcohol. When he saw his ex-wife on the doorstep, he looked startled, then gave her a crooked smile. Well. Grew a conscience, did you? I want to talk to your mother, Patricia said calmly. May I come in? Ignacio hesitated, then stepped aside to let her in. Inside, the place was a mess, dirty dishes, empty bottles, clothes scattered everywhere. The air was heavy and stale. Dolores lay in bed, propped up by pillows. She did look bad, gaunt, her skin sallow, her eyes sunken. But when she saw Patricia, there was a glint of something like malice in her gaze. Come to gloat over your dying mother-in-law, she croaked. Or just to satisfy your curiosity? Neither, Patricia said, sitting on the edge of the bed. I came to talk about the apartment and the children. Ignacio said you're seriously ill. And you didn't believe it, did you? Dolores gave a dry smile. You thought I was faking again to get money out of you. Patricia stayed silent. That was exactly what she had thought. This time it's real, Dolores continued, a strange satisfaction in her voice. Stage 4. Metastases in the liver and bones. The doctors give me 3, maybe 4 months. She handed Patricia a folder with medical documents. Patricia skimmed the doctor's reports, lab results, recommendations for palliative care. It all looked very convincing. I'm very sorry, she said sincerely, handing the folder back. Are you? Dolores laughed bitterly. You've hated me all these years. Admit it, you're happy I'm dying. No, Patricia shook her head. I never wished you dead. I just wanted you to stop interfering in our lives and manipulating Ignacio. I loved him, Dolores said stubbornly. Everything I did was out of love for my son. Patricia looked at the frail woman and, surprisingly, felt no anger, only pity. Here was a woman dying alone in a filthy apartment, with a drunken son and no friends or support. Her love had destroyed Ignacio's life just as surely as it had wrecked their marriage. Ignacio says he can't pay the mortgage, Patricia said after a pause. What will happen to the apartment? We'll have to sell it, Dolores shrugged. What else can we do? We have no money. And your apartment? Patricia asked cautiously. You lived separately until recently, didn't you? I sold it when I got my diagnosis, Dolores said. I thought it would pay for treatment abroad in a good clinic. But it was too late. Now the money's going for painkillers and care. Soon there'll be nothing left. Patricia was silent, trying to gather her thoughts. The situation was even worse than she'd imagined. Dolores was dying, Ignacio was drinking himself to death, and they'd have to sell the apartment. What would happen to the children? You won, Patricia, Dolores suddenly said, her voice bitter. You took my son from me, destroyed our family. Now I'll die alone, and he'll be left alone too, no wife, no kids, no job. I hope you're satisfied. Patricia felt a wave of anger rise in her. Even now, on her deathbed, this woman continued to manipulate and shift the blame. I didn't take your son from you, she said quietly but firmly. You destroyed our family with your interference and manipulations. Ignacio chose you over us, over me and the children. And now he's living with the consequences of that choice. She stood up, ready to leave. You know what's the worst part? Dolores asked suddenly. I really did love him. Too much. So much that I couldn't see I was destroying his life. For a brief moment, something like understanding flickered in her eyes, but it quickly disappeared, replaced by her usual coldness. Tell Carlos and Amelia their grandmother is dying, she said. Maybe they'll want to say goodbye. Patricia nodded silently and left the room. Ignacio was waiting for her in the hallway, leaning against the wall. Well? Convinced now, he asked. Do you believe she's really dying? I believe it, Patricia nodded. And I'm sorry, Ignacio. Truly sorry. He shrugged, as if he didn't care. Will you bring the kids? She wants to see them before she dies. Patricia hesitated. Should she really expose the children to this? To see a dying grandmother who had never shown them much love, and a father who had hit their mother and was now drinking himself into oblivion? I'll ask them, she said at last. If they want to, I'll bring them. But it'll be their choice, no pressure. Ignacio nodded, as if accepting that was fair. And what about the apartment? He asked. Can you help with the payment? No, Patricia shook her head. I don't have that kind of money. But I'm willing to agree to sell it if necessary. We just need to wait for the court's ruling on the property division. By then the bank will have taken it for debt, Ignacio said bitterly. And we'll get peanuts after the auction. Patricia sighed. He was right, and it terrified her. I'll think about what can be done, she said. Maybe my mother can help with the down payment, and we can pay her back later. Ignacio looked at her with surprise, as if he hadn't expected such an offer. Why would you want to help? After everything I've done. Not for you, Patricia answered honestly. For the children. They need a home. He nodded silently, and for a brief moment, something like gratitude flickered in his eyes, but only for a moment. At home, Patricia told the children about their grandmother's illness and asked if they wanted to visit her. The twins' reactions were very different. Amelia, always softer and more emotional, burst into tears and said she wanted to see her grandmother, no matter what. Carlos, however, refused outright. She's bad, he said stubbornly. And Dad's bad. I don't want to see them. Patricia didn't push him. She understood her son's feelings. At just 7 years old, he had already faced betrayal from the people he should have trusted most and was now defending himself the only way he knew, by rejecting them. All right, she nodded. No one's forcing you, Carlos. I'll take your sister, and you can stay with Grandma Ana. The boy nodded with relief. The next day, Patricia took Amelia to her ex-husband's apartment. The place looked cleaner. It seemed Ignacio had made an effort to tidy up before his daughter's arrival. He was sober and even clean-shaven, though his eyes were still bloodshot and his hands trembled slightly. Thank you for bringing her, Ignacio said quietly while Amelia was in the room with her grandmother. Mom's gotten worse these past few days. The doctors say it might be a matter of weeks, not months. Patricia nodded. She could see how hollow Ignacio's face had become, the new lines around his eyes. Despite all the anger she had felt toward him, right now, she couldn't help but pity him. How are you coping? She asked cautiously. I'm not, he shrugged. Just existing. I drink when it gets unbearable. I take care of her when I'm sober. You need help, Patricia said. Social services, hospice care. I'll manage, he cut her off. She's my mother. I have to stay with her till the end. Patricia didn't argue. She understood that for Ignacio, it wasn't just a matter of duty but of redemption, for all the years he had let his mother manipulate him, for the ruined marriage, for everything that had gone wrong. Amelia came out of the room, quiet, her eyes red. She silently took Patricia's hand and headed for the door. Only once they were in the car did she speak. "Grandma looks really bad," she said softly. "She keeps coughing and says it hurts." "Yes, sweetheart, she's very sick," Patricia answered gently. "She said she loves Carlos and me," Amelia continued, "and she's sorry she didn't show it before." Patricia glanced at her daughter, surprised. Had Dolores really said that? Or was it Amelia's imagination filling in what she wanted to hear? "And she said Dad will be really sad without her," the girl added, "that he might do something terrible." Patricia felt a chill run down her spine. What did Dolores mean? That Ignacio would drink even more, or something worse? "Don't worry, Daddy will be fine," she said, trying to sound reassuring. "He has friends who will help." But she knew that wasn't true. Ignacio had no friends left, only drinking companions, and even they were disappearing. Dolores died 2 weeks later, quietly, in her sleep, before the next court hearing about the property division. Patricia found out through a mutual acquaintance, who also said the funeral was in 2 days and that Ignacio had asked to let her know he'd be glad if the children came. Amelia wanted to go, Carlos refused again. Patricia didn't insist, the boy had a right to his feelings. The cemetery was sparsely attended. A few elderly women, probably Dolores's friends, a couple of Ignacio's former colleagues, some neighbors. Ignacio stood by the casket, pale, his eyes empty. He was sober but moved mechanically, like a robot. When he saw Patricia and Amelia, he nodded but didn't approach. After the funeral, when everyone had left, Patricia finally decided to approach her ex-husband. "My condolences, Ignacio," she said softly. "If you need help." "I don't need anything," he cut her off. "Especially not from you." Patricia sighed. She had expected that reaction. "All right. But if you change your mind, call me." "And about the apartment, has the bank already?" "I made the payment," Ignacio interrupted. "Sold Mom's car. It covered 2 months. And after that? We'll see." He turned and walked toward the cemetery gates, shoulders slumped, staring at the ground. Patricia watched him go, anxiety gnawing at her. There was something in his voice, his gaze, that worried her, as if with his mother's death, he had buried the last shreds of his will to live. After the funeral, Ignacio stopped answering calls. Patricia tried several times to reach him to discuss the upcoming court hearing, but his phone was off. The court ruled on the division of property. The apartment was to be split equally between them, with the mortgage divided as well. Since Ignacio didn't show up, the decision was made without him. Patricia's lawyer seemed pleased. "This is a good outcome," he said. "Now you'll need to negotiate with your ex-husband about what to do next. Either one of you buys out the other's share, or the apartment gets sold and the proceeds split." Patricia nodded but felt a wave of anxiety inside. She couldn't afford to buy out Ignacio's share, it would require a huge sum. And if they sold the apartment, after paying off the mortgage, there wouldn't be much left. Barely enough for a small studio on the outskirts of the city. How could she live there with 2 children? After court, she tried to call Ignacio again, no answer. Finally, she decided to go to his apartment. They had to sort things out in person. As she neared the building, she noticed a crowd and the flashing lights of emergency vehicles. Her heart skipped a beat. Something had happened. She parked quickly and hurried toward the entrance. Neighbors, police officers, and gas company workers were gathered there. "What's going on?" she asked a woman standing nearby. "Gas leak in one of the apartments," the woman replied. "Apparently someone left the stove on." The neighbors smelled it and called the gas service. Patricia went cold. "Which apartment?" 46, I think. 4th floor. Ignacio's apartment. Patricia ran toward a policeman blocking the entrance. "Please," she said, "my ex-husband is in there." "Is he all right?" The officer gave her a sympathetic look. "You should speak to the paramedic," he said, pointing to an ambulance parked nearby. Patricia hurried to the ambulance, where a tired-looking paramedic stood. "What about Ignacio?" she blurted out. "Is he alive?" The paramedic shook his head. "Unfortunately not. He'd been dead for several hours when we found him. Carbon monoxide poisoning. Him and another woman." "A woman?" Patricia frowned. "What woman?" "An elderly lady," the medic shrugged. "No ID on her. The police are investigating." Patricia stepped aside, feeling the ground slip from under her feet. Ignacio was dead. She couldn't wrap her mind around it. Just yesterday she had been thinking about dividing the apartment, arranging visits with the children, building a new life. And now he was gone. Later it was confirmed that the woman found with Ignacio was his aunt, Dolores' sister, who had come to help him after Dolores' death. Apparently, Ignacio had been cooking, forgot to turn off the stove, and either fell asleep or passed out from drinking. His aunt likely hadn't noticed the gas leak. At her age, her sense of smell wasn't as sharp. The neighbors only detected the smell in the evening when the gas started seeping into the hallway. They called for help, but it was too late. A month later, Patricia held documents in her hands confirming the closure of the property division case due to the defendant's death. The children sat quietly at the table doing their homework. The apartment now belonged to them by inheritance. The 350,000 pesos spent on the Miami trip had paid off in full. Patricia couldn't help but smile. Sometimes fate knows how to count money better than the most frugal housekeepers.
If you're enjoying it as well, leave a like and subscribe to the channel.